In this episode, Beauty and the Beast. Chasing a slippery ideal. Welcome to Two Architects and a Lawyer. Join architect Luis de Miguel in Valencia and architect lawyer William McLean in Vancouver for observations and commentary on all things design. Here are William and Luis.
Well, hello, William, from sunny Valencia. So today we're going to talk about something that I thought could be interesting for everybody. It's called Beauty and the Beast, and why we think some things are beautiful and why we don't like other stuff. And the way we're going to do this is going to be like two photographs showing similar things, or more or less, and then we're going to discuss why we think they're good or bad.
Well, I've been thinking about this subject, and it's a bit of a slippery one. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, so here goes with the first example. We've got a photograph of two buildings. One is in Taiwan, and the other one is in Tokyo. And one is by an architectural firm that does a lot of this. Now, I don't know what problems the owner of this building had with the neighborhood, that he decided to just sort of block it out altogether with tiny perforations of the brick. On the other hand, we've got almost the same color building, really, but done with glass block by Renzo Piano, and it's the Hermes building in Tokyo. Just to make it clear, I think that the one on the left, the brick facade is horrendous, and I think the Renzo Piano one is quite nice. Just to set the tone. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, it's interesting there. Of course, the way the photographs are displayed, I think that the experience of walking close to those two buildings is obviously going to be quite different. And you'd be very aware with the brick facade of the human input into that facade. Every one of those bricks is placed one at a time by a pair of human hands on top of the other brick. With the glass facade, there's a much different understanding of the origin of the building. So I think those two things somehow contribute to your intellectual understanding of the buildings as attractive or unattractive. I'd like to show another couple of photographs. And here I'm showing two Guggenheim museums, one in New York, one in Bilbao. They're both under construction in these two photographs, which is an interesting way of looking at these two familiar buildings. They're both weird. They're weird buildings, but they both work despite being weird. They're beautiful because they are legible. Even though they're complex, your brain immediately understands the language that they're speaking.
Well, my take on that, as you know, is that the Guggenheim in Bilbao is an extraordinary building. It's extraordinary when it was finished. And the one in New York is extraordinary. And I think the other one in Bilbao was literally groundbreaking, extraordinary. I guess you have to wait till something's finished before you can give it the thumbs up or thumbs down.
Well, you could also make the argument. That the Bilbao picture under construction here reveals that there is an incredible amount of effort to make something which, in its finished state, we know is simple to the point of. It's immediately understandable. Your brain doesn't leap to attempting to decipher how it was accomplished. But the under construction photograph reveals that to support that simplicity, something very complex had to happen. And I don't know that generally is something which goes with beauty. Typically, it seems to me, things that are beautiful at every stage, at every level, from every vantage point, and at every point in time. And I don't know that Bilbao fulfills that requirement completely, but I certainly agree with you that in the finished product, the building is beautiful.
Well, I thought I would, bring something up, because we can talk about beautiful buildings, not so beautiful buildings. And I thought, well, just how many buildings are there in the world? And it turns out, according to a study by the Technical University in Munich, that the total number of buildings in the world is 2.75 billion. So, when you consider that there are almost 9 billion people, and the same thing works out. I mean, not everybody looks like Brad Pitt or Monica Brunelleschi. I mean, it's obviously a lot easier to find ugly than beautiful. I think by definition, beautiful has a bit of a unique aspect to it.
Well, it's interesting that those statistics focus on the built part of the world's surface, arguably the ugliest part of the world's surface. And not arguably, for certain, the ugliest part of the world are the building parts of it. The parts that are not ugly are all the natural parts. We never find a forest or a field or a mountainscape ugly. It seems by definition that that's not possible. And this is important, it seems to me, to be understanding
Absolutely.
beauty.
Absolutely. The human intervention, particularly where I live in Valencia, is absolutely ghastly. I mean, it's a crime, really.
So the photographs we're looking at on the screen now, the pair of them, quite a contrast between a Gothic cloister on the left, an English Gothic cloister, and a very simple concrete building on the right, also a religious building, a sanctuary, a chapel on the right with a large triangular door, very modern building. I was going to say, we never find a forest ugly. That's a striking fact. People like Christopher Alexander, who've written about this kind of thing, he wrote a book called The Nature of Order. It's one of his books. He would argue that the Bilbao, which we were talking about a minute ago, is beautiful because it mimics complex mathematical order found in biological organisms. These photographs on the screen at the moment, we like landscapes that have both prospect and refuge. We want to look at the savanna, the field, where the lions are, but we also need a place to hide. And that's why buildings that offer both those things are very attractive to us and are perceived as beautiful. The building on the right, by the way, is one I'm going to get back to in some other photographs. It's a chapel in rural Germany by an architect named Peter Zumthor. Let me take you to another couple of photographs, and I'll just keep going on this one building, which has really intrigued me. Okay, here we're looking at a pair of photographs of the same building. And here it is under construction on the left. What he's done is he's begun with a kind of a wigwam structure of tree trunks. There are 112 tree trunks there. And these form the formwork for the concrete, which is going to go up around it and create a hollowed out section in the interior. Concrete was up 15 meters or something like that, enclosing these interior sections. And then the fire was lit and the trunks were burned out of there. So the photograph on the right shows the interior surface after the fire was over. And what it leaves is this kind of sensory pleasure, which is both the lingering smell of the charring, the beautiful touch to your fingers, the quality of the light, the memory of how the place was built, the contrast between this interior and the very brutalist exterior. And those things combine to create, in my view, beauty.
Really? Well, that's a surprise. I find it hard to agree. Anyway, I can see the whole thinking behind it, and I appreciate the effort and everything else. But I think the result is really, I don't know. I mean, it'd be hard to judge this without seeing the whole chapel inside, maybe. But I'm not thrilled about it. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Sullivan Building.
We're looking at another pair of photographs. On the left is Louis Sullivan's Guarantee Building in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Very highly decorated in terracotta and masterfully done. On the right is a typical American McMansion, a suburban McMansion made out of brick with very little detail. What makes modern buildings seem so ugly, according to many writers on this topic, is that it's a lack of complexity. Today's modern indifferent design, the kind that you see in suburbs, often has just one scale. It's large. It's frontal and it's large.
Well, Also, what you don't see in that photograph of the house on the right is the f- the 3 or 4 car garage immediately to the right, which adds more insult to the injury of this contraption. And I don't think a lot of people would find that beautiful. I think the Sullivan thing is at at the least, it's extremely interesting. Similarly, in terms of terracotta, I've got a picture here of a house in Amsterdam, quite recent, in 12 or something, and that is made with terracotta, which you can see on the detail on the close-up of the facade. From afar, it looks just like normal brick, doesn't it? And yet it's extremely textured and volumetric, and all kinds of things are going on here. But at the end, it ties in with the neighbors and so on.
I'm imagining that the designer of this was acting on the very thing we were just talking about, the idea that this complexity up close and from a distance is something which contributes to beauty. But I'm also wondering about the economy of construction.
I think the manufacturer of this brick or terracotta had a huge input, and he must have given it away just to have one building using this stuff. That's my take on it. Because you don't, on face value, you don't say, wow, what great brick. He's done something like really banal, but using this intricate material. So I think he's a bit misguided, frankly. Lastly, and I won't go any further, there's a building in Tokyo by a guy named Oka Keisuke, who spent himself 10 years putting up this building with his own hands. It was really one of the most bizarre. This looks like it needs a scalpel to get it off the face of the earth. But
You don't want to linger, do you? I mean, you want to take one quick look
and say, "Oh my God, yeah."
and then turn your back and never see it again as long as you live.
It's not what you call. We used that phrase before. It's not what you call high curb appeal.
No. I'm going to direct you to this pair of photographs when you'll see that there is a suburban mall with a parking lot
Oh yes,
in front of it.
yeah.
And our old friend, the chapel in rural Germany. This is a different view of it, showing you this concrete monolith, which has got these tree trunk formwork inside it.
I don't know. I want to run away from both.
Maybe, but this is to go with the famous edict from Robert Venturi, who said less is a bore. I mean, his idea was that messy vitality is more beautiful than obvious unity. And switching the pictures now to this one, which shows a suburban nightmare in the foreground and a tranquil Spanish Majorcan stone house on the right. On the left, this happens to be a inexplicable Chinese suburb of McMansions, probably a hectare of them. But from a distance, you can see how unpleasant they are. The stone building on the right is what we all kind of aspire to. You look at that building and you understand what it might be like to walk through it, what's next door, what it smells like, how it was built, how it's going to evolve over time.
However, it's the same idea. The idea of a little building with some plot of land around it. I mean, in essence, it's the same. They're the same. It's just that one is really ghastly. However, maybe from up close it's not so bad, I think.
You're very generous.
Well, it's just that, obviously Andy Warhol brought up the idea that repetition makes anything look at least interesting, maybe not beautiful. Whereas, this photograph of yours here certainly contradicts, the rule.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
Well, let's just switch to exactly the same thing, but this time in the field of typography.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing on the screen now is an ordinary handicap accessible sign that you might see in a public building with a wheelchair symbol on top and a long message below it, and the same thing repeated in Braille. That's on the left. On the right is a book design, a catalog design. One is ugly because it's an accident. There's no sense that there's care being taken. It's simply a delivery of information in the most expeditious way. The other one is arguably beautiful because it shows deliberate choice. There's effort, which comes across in a way that is very pleasurable to the eye.
Frankly, he's got the typography jumping all over the place. Yeah, it looks okay. I don't think it's any prize winner thing. I think the ski poster, with every way you can possibly talk about Switzerland, and if you still don't get it, there's a flag. But I think it's clever, with the skis. Yeah, ski nice. It's nice. It's got a lot of color. Again, I'm not particularly moved. And the Helvetica one on the left, I mean, it's hard to do something wrong in Helvetica.
The reason I'm showing you that one, executed in Helvetica, which is one of a couple of typefaces, the only two, in fact, that Massimo Vignelli was interested in using. And I'm going to switch to another example by him. If you look at this pair of photographs, I think it's a poster design on the right, book design on the left by Vignelli in a typeface called Bodoni. Same designer, by the way, as did the poster we looked at a minute ago, or the book design we looked at a minute ago with the large white K and the red background that you had some problems with. That one was Helvetica. These two are Vignelli in using Bodoni. Both of them are used over and over and over again by many designers, including Vignelli, to great effect. We never seem to get tired of looking at them.
Well, first let's talk about this building. There's a lady in front of a brick wall that looks like a real mishmash of bricks.
Yes.
So the only reason I can think of doing a brick wall like that is to prevent graffiti, but only graffiti that you write with your hand or something. I mean, clearly you can still spray stuff, whatever you want on this thing, but I don't get it. And then the building itself, it turns out it's a residence and dining hall in a place called St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. And the building itself, it's got some play. I mean, it looks pretty banal, but it's actually, and it's got, I don't know, what looks like maybe books leaning against it, or I can't make out what those white things are. The dominoes. What's up with
Yes.
that? I don't understand that, but I like the separation. I like the volumes, and I really wish he would let us know why how do you specify a brick wall like that? I mean, you just say, do whatever you want? I don't know. How do you tell the bricklayer this is what you want? Obviously, brick in North America and in Europe, but particularly in North America, has been used a lot for all kinds of stuff. In Spain, you wouldn't be caught dead leaving brick exposed like that. I mean, they'd rip up your architectural degree and throw away your May line. Brick gets covered. It gets rendered. You don't leave it like that. Of course, there are thousands of buildings in America that look great in bare brick. Frankly, when you look at a house that happens to be in South Africa by this Chris van Niekerk, a very simple looking house, very well ordained, a bit habitat-y kind of, these cubes and glass in the right places, and you can sense that it's got a beautiful view, and it's really well arranged, and the car enters from below, and you don't have to go nuts. You don't have to go Guggenheim to make something beautiful. Something as simple as this. He put it together very simply, very nice.
Oh, that's exactly what I wanted to swivel to now, going back to graphics for a minute, because I think that these things are all connected. Our reaction to one is similar to another. What's on the screen at the moment is a very famous map. It was the work of a French civil engineer named Minard, who did this map in the mid 1800s. It depicts the advance into and the retreat from Russia by Napoleon's army, which was, of course, decimated by the winter in Russia, the Russian army, and so on. This chart has 6 different sets of data built into it. It shows the geography of the advance, rivers, cities, battles, the course of the army's direction, the path flowing in and out, the number of soldiers remaining. Also on the map is temperature. Anyway, Edward Tufte is a writer who produced a book called The Visual Display of Quantitative Information. And that's where this map was reproduced, among many other places. But he reproduced it in his book as with the suggestion that it was the best statistical graph ever drawn. And he argues that beauty in design comes from high data density. He says you give the eye a lot of very high quality information to process with no clutter, and the result is beauty. He's finding that in this graphic representation. I see no reason why you couldn't say the same thing applies to architecture.
Yes.
Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap up this episode. We'll take it up the next time. Always a pleasure to have this conversation. Okay, see you next time.
Take care. Bye-bye, William.